Millions of people will emotionally collapse over a game played by strangers. They'll scream at televisions, cry in parking lots, cancel plans, lose sleep, all because of something that happened on a field they weren't on, decided by people they'll never meet. And for a huge portion of the world, that experience is sacred. It's real. It matters deeply. But some people have watched this happen their entire lives and felt nothing. Not contempt, not superiority, just a quiet, genuine confusion. Like watching a language they never learned being spoken with incredible passion. They don't hate sports. They never did. They just never formed the psychological attachment most people seem to build naturally. And if you've ever stood in a room full of people losing their minds over a game and thought, times, why can't I feel this too? This video is about you. Not to fix you, not to explain what's wrong with you, because nothing is. Your brain isn't broken. It isn't cold. It isn't missing something essential that everyone else got. What's actually happening is something far more interesting. Your mind simply routes meaning, belonging, and emotional energy through different pathways. And psychology has a lot to say about why. Some minds naturally attach to groups. Others instinctively stay psychologically independent. Neither is superior. They're just genuinely different operating systems, shaped by temperament, early experience, and the particular way your nervous system learned to feel safe in the world. Let's talk about what's actually going on. The first thing to understand is how powerfully sports tap into something ancient in the human brain, tribal identity. For most of human history, your survival depended on belonging to a group. Your emotions synchronized with the people around you. You celebrated together, grieved together, won and lost together. That collective emotional experience wasn't entertainment, it was survival. Sports, psychologically, reactivate that circuitry. When someone's team scores, their nervous system registers it as times we won. The victory feels personal because the brain has merged individual identity with group identity. The stranger on the field becomes, neurologically, an extension of the self. But here's where people differ. Some nervous systems find that merger deeply satisfying, even necessary. Others resist it, not consciously, but automatically. The psychological merger never quite completes, and the result is that watching sports feels oddly distant, like reading about someone else's experience rather than living inside it. This isn't emotional limitation, it's a different attachment architecture. There's also something worth understanding about emotional investment and personal control. Sports asks something unusual of the viewer. It asks them to care deeply about outcomes they have zero influence over. To feel the weight of a loss, the rush of a win, the anxiety of a close game, all for events entirely outside their hands. For many people, this is pure relief. The stakes are real, but the responsibility isn't theirs. It's emotional intensity without personal consequence. That's actually a beautiful psychological escape. But for other minds, caring deeply about things outside their control produces a kind of internal friction. Something quiet in their psychology says times, why would I invest emotionally here? It's not cynicism. It's closer to a deeply ingrained sense that emotional energy should flow toward things that feel personally meaningful, personally influenced, personally connected. They don't feel emotionally complete by becoming part of a crowd. Their sense of self stays located inside, not outside, not in teams, not in organizations, not in the outcome of a game in a city they may have never visited. And this is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Nervous systems aren't all calibrated the same way. Some are wired for high stimulation, the noise, the crowd, the explosion of collective emotion. Sports culture delivers all of that at maximum intensity. The roar of a stadium, the synchronized anguish of fans, the explosive swings between hope and despair for certain nervous systems. This is paradise. It's exactly the frequency they're tuned to. But other nervous systems run quieter. They're calibrated for depth over volume, introspection over immersion. A long conversation, a piece of music, a book, a walk alone, somewhere beautiful. These register as genuinely satisfying in a way that a packed sports bar never quite does. Not because they're avoiding experience, because their brain is drinking experience differently, through a different channel entirely. This is stimulation psychology, and it explains a lot of the social disconnect. Non-sports people feel the feeling of standing in the middle of something everyone else finds electric, and feeling strangely, almost embarrassingly, unmoved. But here's the part nobody tells you. The needs that sports fulfills, community, ritual, emotional release, meaning, belonging, those needs are universal. Every human brain has them. The difference is simply where the brain goes to meet them. Some people find belonging in crowds. Others find it in solitude. Some people find ritual in game days and team colors. Others find it in Sunday mornings with coffee and a book, in creative routines, in philosophical conversations, in art, in nature, in the careful construction of a private inner world that feels more real to them than any stadium ever could. Neither path is wrong. They're just the brain doing what brains do, finding the specific environments where it feels most alive. Think about how this shifts across a lifetime. When you're young, the social pressure to participate in sports culture is enormous. School hallways are full of it. Lunch tables run on it. Missing the references means missing the conversation. And so non-sports people often learn early to quietly navigate around a social world that seems to operate on a frequency they can't quite access. That experience leaves a mark. Some people describe a low-grade, persistent sense of being slightly outside, not fully excluded, but never quite fully in. Standing near the campfire, but not quite warming up. As they get older, something shifts. The social pressure softens a little. They find their people, the ones who talk about the things that actually light them up. And that quiet sense of being different starts to transform into something closer to self-knowledge, not isolation, identity. The behavior doesn't disappear. It deepens into self-understanding. Psychologically, this distance from sports culture often functions as a kind of emotional regulation. When the world around you is loud, synchronized, and collectively aroused, opting out is a way the nervous system protects itself. It preserves a sense of independent identity. It keeps the emotional interior calm and self-directed. Think of it like a quiet room in a very loud house. You're not hiding, you're regulating. You're keeping yourself intact in an environment that asks you to dissolve into something larger, and your mind instinctively says no. That instinct isn't antisocial, it's self-preserving. It's your psychology doing exactly what it was built to do, keeping your emotional world in your own hands. Competition is another thread here. Sports culture runs on competitive energy, the scoreboard, the standing, the zero-sum logic of winning and losing. For many people, that energy is intoxicating. It's clean, simple, immediate. You're either ahead or you're not. That clarity feels good. But some psychologies are less responsive to status competition. They don't get a rush from dominance. They don't feel diminished by loss in the same way. The scoreboard logic doesn't emotionally land the same way it does for others, not because they lack drive, but because their motivation tends to run inward toward personal meaning, personal growth, personal curiosity, rather than outward, toward rankings and rivals and who's on top. This isn't weakness. It's a different motivational architecture. The fuel is just different. And if you've ever felt genuinely left out in a culture that treats sports fluency as a social language everyone's supposed to speak, that feeling is worth acknowledging directly, because it's real. In America especially, sports isn't just entertainment. It's social infrastructure. It's how people bond at work, at family events, at neighborhood gatherings. Not being part of it can feel like being handed a menu written in a language you never studied. That social friction is real. And it's not your fault. It's simply what happens when your natural psychological makeup sits outside the dominant social frequency of your environment. Maybe people who don't obsess over sports aren't missing something. Maybe their minds simply search for meaning, identity, and emotional connection in completely different places. Places that feel just as vivid, just as real, just as necessary to them as the stadium feels to someone else. The human brain always finds its way toward belonging, toward ritual, toward the experiences that make existence feel worth feeling. It just doesn't always find it in the same direction. And that's not a flaw in your design. That's just you, being exactly the kind of person your brain was built to make you.